Now we have a special guest with this broadcast information that we are bringing to you to your streams. We are speaking about James S. Henry, who is a researcher, investigator, journalist, author of several books, and he's joining us today to go deep into the analysis of everything that is going on now on the Middle East. Hi, welcome, and thank you very much, James, for being here with us today.
Good to be with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much for joining
Okay.
us.
I apologize for my terrible Spanish, but
It's
ordinarily I'll do the gringo thing and just speak English. But
Thank you very much.
yeah, this is a very busy time. We were seeing a lot of demonstrations in the United States today. New York City had about a massive demonstration, No Kings demonstration. We had one out where I live in the Hamptons that was very well attended, and all over the country, really, Los Angeles, Seattle, Chicago, even in Texas, we had massive demonstrations, people protesting the monarch. um, President Trump right now, and we're watching it on TV here, is celebrating his 79th birthday, and he's doing that with a $45 million parade, which also celebrates, I guess, the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. So, yeah, there is some overlap there that he's tried to exploit. But the situation that he's kind of papering over with this parade is the ongoing crisis in the Middle East, which is escalating out of control at the moment. I think the concern that prompted President Putin of Russia to call Trump today and to offer to be, ironically enough, for Putin, a peacemaker, given his behavior in the Ukraine. Some people would have questions about that. But, he's looking at what's likely to have the likely impact on this of the world economy if this continues to escalate. We had Iran basically threatening to block the Hormuz Straits, which are a major conduit for oil from the Middle East. About 18 to 20 million barrels of oil per day go through the Hormuz Straits. It's not likely that they would be able to cut off all of that because the U.S. Navy and the U.K. Navy are there patrolling to oppose the Iranians doing that. But if they cut off just half of it, that would be, let's say, 9 million barrels of oil per day, and the world is consuming about 100. So that's a 10% reduction in the supply of oil if the Iranians moved on that. And they're threatened to do that because the Israelis have been starting to attack their gas fields. The largest gas field that they have is the so-called South Pars gas field. It's one that's jointly owned with Qatar. It's about 75% of Iranian gas. It's huge. It's nearly 8% of world gas reserves are in that one South Pars gas field. And the Israelis just decided to try to bomb it today. So that's a significant escalation. Israel's been continuing to bomb 10 to 15 other sites, originally intended to put Iran's nuclear development program, in jeopardy. Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons. Nobody claims that they do, but there's a threat that Israel perceives as that they're getting the capacity to develop them. So Israel seems to have been broadening its objectives here from simply taking out these nuclear facilities like Natanz and Fordow and Isfahan to really going after Iran's whole economic base and perhaps trying to produce regime change in Iran. I mean, about 95% of Iranians depend on natural gas for their heating and for energy consumption and for cooking. And so this would have an immediate effect. If we see the thing, I mean, I think the thing that Putin and Trump are both now very worried about talking about is that the world economy is pretty shaky, with, partly due to Trump's own tariff policies, which we've seen, partly due to, the fact that we've had a pretty strong period of growth going into this year worldwide, and the World Bank is predicting that we're going to slow down in any case. But this is not a time to go toying with oil prices. If we had a 9 billion barrel per day blockage in the Gulf of Hormuz, that would send oil prices, from about $70 a barrel, 70 to 75 now, to well over $100 a barrel, maybe as high as 120 dollars per barrel very quickly. And, that would take the wind out of the economy, of the whole world's economy. So that's, I think they're finally beginning to realize that this escalation between Israel and Iran is really threatening menacing the whole world economy. And I think that that's enough of an issue to get even Donald Trump to pay some attention to this issue.
James, I wanted to ask you, how would you describe the priorities of U.S. President Donald Trump when the U.S. is summoned in these protests that have lasted for over 9 days in the country against his immigration policies? However, he is being more interested in what is going on in the Middle East and in prompting this escalation of tensions in the U.S., in the Middle East, providing military aid to Israel in this context. How would you describe this erratic priority setup?
Well, I think that he was trying to pretend that he was a peacemaker and he had the Iranian situation under control. It may have been an elaborate piece of deception on his part. He may have already agreed with Bibi Netanyahu that they were going to make this attack. It's hard to believe that Netanyahu would have made the attack without U.S. approval. Secretary of State Rubio denied that the U.S. had any warning of it, but Trump said just the opposite. So, Trump is a very, I guess, polypathetic policymaker. The immigration policies, the reprehensible policies he's been implementing, especially in California, is a political event for him. This is his way of demonizing migrants, of demonizing poor people who are just basically coming to the United States because there happens to be a pretty good economy here and there are jobs. And so they've decided to turn loose, ICE, which has about 20,000 agents of its own. LAPD has about 9,000. The LA Sheriff's Office has another 9,000 or so. There's all this police presence in LA, which, Trump is no friend to the governor of California. He's Newsom is a Democrat. And so that's part of what the politics are all about. But I think that Trump is quite happy to see people being beaten up and tossed and even evicted from the United States. As far as he goes, this is just playing to his base, the MAGA base, which somehow believes that sending undocumented workers out of the United States will help them. I mean, these are people who are working in things like car washes or working in agriculture. And, in California has about a huge force of people who are undocumented working on the farms there. So if you expel them, it's going to raise the price of food and create lots of disturbances. And the small business is not in favor of this. But, Trump has got this agenda that's supported almost as a kind of civic religion by his MAGA supporters. It can't really be explained, I think, in rational economic terms. The economists I talk to, are just flabbergasted that this kind of Hoover-type tariff policy has been, has gotten his support. But in the background, we also have to remember that the other key leg of his economic policy, and maybe the real thing driving it, is the attempt to really gut the income tax and to gut federal spending, and then to give very wealthy people, especially, a huge tax cut. The tax cut that they proposed is so large, it's close, at least to $4 trillion if they extend the 2017 tax cuts. It's so large that it would require them to increase the federal deficit over 10 years by about at least $2.6 trillion. That's what the latest CBO projection said last week, but it's probably north of 3 to 4 trillion. And that's, at this time, the United States is already sitting on at least a $36 trillion government debt for the federal government. It's, we've seen interest rates respond here, rising as a result of this attempt to pass this great big bill through Congress. It has a long way to go. It won't be passed probably, if it is passed by the Senate, it will be completely reworked. But, basically it shows what Trump really cares about, and that's, sort of helping his friends and wealthy supporters take advantage of the lock-hold they have on Congress to ram through these tax cuts while they have control of the Congress. So that's kind of the economic agenda behind his tariff policy. Tariffs are supposed to raise, he's expected them to raise 1.2 trillion over this 10-year period. They're going to have a hard time matching that target. We found that when Musk was running the attempt to reduce the size of government waste, he had expected to add another $1 trillion of waste and cuts in government spending. He could only find about 75 billion that he was willing to sign up to cut during his time in office. He's since left a big part of that. But this whole package of combining cuts for the poor, tariffs, which are basically a form of increased, kind of a sales tax, really, is going to be paid by Americans at the grocery store and in everything that they buy that's imported. And then doing that simply to justify or to partly finance a massive redistribution of wealth to the top 10%. So that's what we're really talking about from a standpoint of political economy.
You mentioned,
I don't think that Trump. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
You mentioned earlier the impact that this conflict is already having in the oil market worldwide. But I wanted to ask you, what could be the real consequences for the countries of the region, taking into account that this could become a potential war in which nuclear powers could be involved?
I think that's the worst case scenario here. We're talking about two countries that have maximalist objectives, and they basically, I'm not going to go into the political situation in Iran and Israel, other than to say that neither of them are really perfect democracies. And so the extent to which Netanyahu is engaged in this continuing campaign in Gaza and is continuing this sudden escalation in Iran just for his own personal survival. He's facing a corruption trial at the moment. He's had a very shaky hold on power with his own political party. that is undoubtedly coloring his view of this. The Iranian regime is got its own problems as well. So it isn't as if we have all of these problems being resolved by rational actors who have no stake in the game for themselves. But I think at the end of the day, the world community has to put pressure on both the United States, which is really behind the scenes here, the driving force, and on Iran to basically say, okay, let's try to come up with a reasonable solution to this. How much of it is just Iran's principle that they are a signatory of the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty. They have subjected themselves to extensive inspections by the international agencies. Israel is said to have 75 to 400 nuclear weapons, is not a member of the NPT, and yet seems to feel entitled to take these actions because of its own paranoia about Iran. So, this is a very deep divide, and it can only be addressed, I think, if we have some of the other players in the region, like Turkey, maybe China to some extent. They've been a little bit. They're a big customer for Iranian oil, but they've been on the sidelines at least. There needs to be some kind of peacemaking going on here, and that's really hard to imagine while they're sending missiles and fighters at each other, and So I think it's as Pope Leo today said, there's an appeal to reason here, but that's precisely what's missing.
We have been seeing, for almost 2 years, how the genocide against the Palestinian people have been going on non-stop, in spite of the repeated calls of the international community for Israel to put a halt, to stop this genocide against the people of Palestine. What do you think that the international community could really do? How can the voices be united for real and make us and try to improve, to achieve that Israel stops this aggression against Iran and this escalation of tensions?
This is a terrible situation. It's an ongoing nightmare. We find 58 Gazans were killed today, reportedly. There's more than 56,000 who have been killed by arms, at least. Many of the bodies are have not been recovered. But then you find excess mortality is in Gaza among the 2.2 million people there. Has also escalated. That's the kind of mortality that happens because people can't get dialysis or they can't get insulin shots. They don't know. They in Gaza's case, they run out of the tests for insulin. So people are dying because people are just giving themselves insulin, not knowing what levels they have. So there's a substantial, maybe thousands of additional fatalities in Gaza. The Israelis have basically set up this food distribution system, which is a nightmare. They're not registering people to use it. They've crowded everybody into a small share of Gaza in the south. They're forcing them to go walk and then exposing them to gunfire. It's a nightmare scenario. I mean, I just think it's a death camp. So the world community has been very slow, from my standpoint, to take action to get them to stop. There's no question that Israelis feel aggrieved about the Hamas attack that occurred on October 7th, and that's been their excuse for what's going on. But this isn't really addressing Hamas's situation. They want Hamas to surrender. There's no, it's not likely that Hamas is going to, simply surrender here. They've had about 5,000 dead since the Israelis suspended the ceasefire back in March. And so this is just for ordinary Palestinians, this is a nightmare. I think it required, it requires really the United States to, and Trump has expressed some impatience with the ongoing Gaza situation recently, but it's simply a question of cutting the Israelis off. I mean, they can't be allowed to continue this bloodshed any longer. And we see a growing number of European countries threatening to embargo. We've had just this week Ireland, I think the UK, and then we also had Australia, New Zealand, I believe Spain, France was considering some sanctions against Israel. It's not going to stop until there are substantial sanctions against Israel, which make them, perceive that they are, this is not a winning strategy for them. Many Israelis that I've talked to agree with that analysis. In fact, some, have indicated that Netanyahu actually vetoed when there was a proposal to stop the flow of funds from Qatar to Hamas that went into the building of these tunnels. It was more than $1 billion. Most of that flowed through Israeli banks. And, some of the people who were involved in monitoring terror finance in Israel received an order from Netanyahu, reportedly, to stand aside and let that money flow, either because he believed he could create, Hamas could be controlled and they would be a good rival to the Palestinian Authority, or because he foresaw that this exact situation would happen. There would be an explosion and it would be a justification for clearing the Palestinians out of Gaza once and for all. It's hard to know why he's as complicated a figure as Donald Trump. So there's always more than one reason for any action. But it's hard to know how you solve this situation with Netanyahu still in office, and that's been a real problem. I don't have any magic solutions. I'm not an Israeli expert or a Middle East expert. I'm basically an American economist who's studied, how countries all over the world have ended up with not being able to build civil liberties and democratic regimes, and that's partly the West's fault. So
thank you, James. Thank you very much for your time here with us and help us analyze all that is happening.
Happy to do it. Yeah, happy. Well, I love Venezuela. I've been to Angel Falls a couple times. I miss it dearly. So happy to help in any way possible.
Thank you very much. That's very great for you. Thank you.
Great.